I bet $2 million no one can fix this car.
Oh? But I can fix it before midnight.
The clock on the showroom wall said 11:14 p.m., and the most expensive car in the building had not made a sound in 9 hours. It sat on a mirrored platform at the center of Sloan Whitlock's flagship showroom, a Bugatti Chiron, pearl white, 2.5 tons of art and engineering under a ceiling hung with 300 crystal lights, surrounded by 300 people in evening clothes who had come to watch it roar to life as the centerpiece of the night and had instead watched it sit there, silent, dead, beautiful, and humiliating. Sloan Whitlock did not do humiliation. So she had done the thing she always did when a moment turned against her. She had turned it into a show. A challenge, a bet, announced from the platform with a microphone and a smile that her oldest employees knew was the smile she wore when she was furious. $2 million, she said. To the room, to the cameras, to the world. Cash, tonight, to anyone who can start this car before midnight. She let it land. My own master technicians have had 9 hours. The best in the state. They can't do it. So I'll put my money where my reputation is. The smile sharpened. I bet $2 million that nobody in this room can start it. The room laughed and applauded, the way rooms do for the very rich. And from the back, near the service door, where a man in a gray work shirt with Delgado Roadside embroidered over, the pocket had been standing for the last 4 minutes with his 12-year-old daughter beside him, a man who had come to this building to jump, start a guest's dead Mercedes in the parking structure, and had wandered. In on his way out, a voice said, not loud, just clear. Before midnight, you said? Heads turned. Sloan Whitlock found him with her eyes, took in the work shirt, the scuffed boots, the kid, the toolbox in his hand. That's right, she said, and her voice had a smile in it that wasn't kind. Before midnight. You want to try, friend? Be my guest. My technicians went to engineering school. What did you go to? A few people laughed. The man in the work shirt didn't. He looked at the white car on its mirror. He looked at the clock. He looked for 1 second down at his daughter, who was looking up at him with an expression he knew very well, the one that meant, we need that money, Dad, but only if it's real. He set down his toolbox. Oh, he said. But I can start it. Before midnight. The room went quiet. Sloan Whitlock laughed out loud one bright, disbelieving note. You can start it. The man who jumps dead batteries on the side of the highway is going to start a $2 million Bugatti that the best technicians in the state could not. I jump dead batteries on the side of the highway about 40 times a week, the man said. And there was no anger in it, just fact. I'd say I'm exactly the man you want. He rolled up his sleeves. The clock said 11:15. They called Sloan Whitlock the Queen of Supercars, and she had built the throne herself, brick by brick, out of nothing. 26 years ago, she had been a saleswoman on the floor of someone else's dealership. The only woman on a sales team that had treated her like a mistake, outselling every one of them while they took credit for her numbers in meetings she wasn't invited to. She had learned, in those years, 2 things that would define the rest of her life. The first was that she was better than the people above her. The second was that being better was not enough. You also had to make people watch you be better, loudly, or they would simply pretend it wasn't happening. So she had learned to put on a show. She had opened her own dealership at 31, with a stunt driving a Lamborghini through a plate glass window for a television ad. And the show had worked, because the show always worked. And 25 years later, Whitlock Motors was an empire of 11 luxury dealerships, a media presence, a brand. Sloan Whitlock was a person people recognized in airports. She had turned herself into a spectacle on purpose, because she had learned young that a woman who wanted to be taken seriously in this world had to be impossible to ignore. The bets were part of it. It had started as marketing outrageous public wagers that drew cameras and crowds. I'll bet anyone in this room they can't beat my time around the track. I'll bet you this car against your business that I close more deals this quarter. They were theater. Mostly, she usually won, because she set them up to win, and on the rare occasions she lost, she paid with a flourish that made the loss into its own kind of advertising. But somewhere in 25 years, the theater had eaten the person. This was the thing none of the 300 people in her showroom that night could have seen, watching her work the room in a silver gown with a microphone in her hand. Sloan Whitlock had turned every relationship in her life into a transaction or a contest, because those were the only two kinds of human connection she fully trusted. Her employees were paid. Her rivals were competitors. The people who flattered her wanted something, and she always knew what, and the knowing was lonely in a way she had stopped letting herself feel a long time ago. She could not remember the last time someone had spoken to her without an angle. She could not remember the last time she had spoken to someone without one either. The Chiron was supposed to be the night's triumph. She had acquired it for the showroom's 10th anniversary gala, the showstopper, the car that would start on cue at the stroke of the unveiling and fill the room with that impossible 16-cylinder thunder while the cameras rolled. Her people had brought it in 2 days early. It had been fine when it arrived. And then, on the afternoon of the gala, when a technician had gone to position it and bring it to life for the rehearsal, it had done nothing. No crank, no lights, nothing. Her master technicians, and they were the best in the state, she paid for the best, had spent 9 hours on it. They had scanners plugged into it, laptops, factory diagnostic equipment. They chased fault codes down into the car's electronic nervous system and found a thicket of them, contradictory and alarming. And the more they dug, the more convinced they became that something deep and expensive was wrong. And the clock ran down, and the guests arrived, and the car sat dead on its mirror under 300 crystal lights. So Sloan Whitlock had done what she always did. She had turned her humiliation into a show and bet $2 million that no one could fix it, because she was certain that if her best-paid experts couldn't, then no one in that room could either. She had built her whole life on being the smartest, most prepared, most certain person in any room. She had never once, in 26 years, considered that the answer to a problem might be standing by the service door in a work shirt, holding a toolbox, that the certainty she was about to bet $2 million on was the same certainty that had made her, without ever noticing it, completely alone. Ray Delgado had started 40,000 dead cars, and he had never once been impressed by any of them. That was the thing 22 years of roadside work does to a man. It strips the mystique off machines. When you have knelt in the breakdown lane of 1,000 highways in the rain and the dark, jump pack in hand, reviving everything from rusted-out economy cars to $250,000 exotics, you stop believing that expensive things are complicated and cheap things are simple. You learn the opposite. You learn that a car is a car, that an engine needs the same handful of things to run that it needed 100 years ago: fuel, spark, air, compression, and a way to turn over, and that 90% of the time, when one won't start, the reason is not deep. The reason is dumb. The reason is something somebody overlooked. Ray had a saying for it, one he'd said to his daughter so many times she could finish it for him. Cars don't die of mysterious causes. They die of simple ones nobody bothered to check. And then the part she'd add, rolling her eyes but smiling. Same as most things, Dad. He was 47. He ran Delgado roadside out of a work van, and his own 2 hands, no shop, no employees. Just Ray and a phone that rang at all hours and a reputation. Built one stranded motorist at a time, as the guy you called when your car died somewhere it shouldn't have. He was good. He was better than good. He was the kind of good that doesn't come with a diploma, because it can't the kind that comes only from doing the same thing 40,000 times and paying attention every single one of them. He had not always been a roadside man. He'd come up in dealership service departments, a real technician, certified, the whole thing. He'd left that world a decade ago partly because the dealerships kept pushing him to upsell repairs people didn't need, and Ray could not do it. It sat wrong in him. He'd rather make less money than lie to a scared person about their car. Partly because going independent meant he set his own hours, and his own hours meant he could be there for Mia. Mia was 12. Her mother, Tara, had left when Mia was 6, not dramatically, not cruelly, just a marriage that had quietly run out of road, and Tara had remarried and moved 2 hours away and saw Mia some weekends and on the phone. It was civil. It was fine. It was also, in the practical accounting of who got the 2 fevers and the school forms and the daily grinding work of raising a kid, almost entirely Ray. And money was tight, not dramatic, bankruptcy movie tight. The other kind. The kind nobody makes movies about because it's too ordinary and too relentless, the slow daily squeeze of a single income against rising everything. The kind where you're never quite drowning, but you're never quite not, where a blown transmission in your own van or a dentist bill can undo 6 months of careful scraping. Ray worked constantly. He was tired in a way that sleep didn't touch, and his daughter, this was the part that Ray carried like a stone. His daughter knew it. Mia was 12, and she watched prices. She'd stopped asking for things. She'd started, without being asked, keeping a little notebook of what they spent, like she could protect her dad by helping him hold the line. A 12-year-old should not be doing that. Ray knew it. He couldn't stop it. She loved him, and that was how she'd decided to love him, and there's no arguing a kid out of that. The bet, when Ray heard it from the back of that showroom, did a strange and violent thing in his chest. $2 million. He did the math instantly, the way poor men do not the fantasy math, the real math. $2 million was not a yacht. $2 million was the house. Paid off. It was the van replaced. It was Mia's college. Fully, no loans, no choosing a worse school for money. It was the end of the squeeze. It was his daughter never again keeping a notebook of grocery prices to protect her father. It was, in one word, enough a word Ray Delgado had not been able to say about his life in a very long time. And it was, almost certainly, sitting right there for the taking. Because Ray had looked at that dead white car across the room, and at the laptops plugged into it, and the panicked technicians, and a feeling he knew very well had settled over him. Calm and certain. They were chasing the deep thing. In Ray's experience, when smart people with expensive equipment chase the deep thing on a car that won't start, it's because they've skipped the dumb thing. The fancier the car, the worse the instinct, because the people working on it can't believe that $2 million of engineering could be defeated by something simple, so they never check for something simple. Their respect for the machine blinds them to it. Ray had no such respect. A car was a car. But there was the other thing. The work shirt. The kid beside him. The room full of people who would laugh. A proud man does not love the idea of walking into a rich woman's spectacle to be her entertainment, win or lose. For one long moment, Ray Delgado almost walked out the service door and went home, and never said a word. Then Mia looked up at him. She didn't say do it. She didn't say we need it. She just looked at him with those eyes that had been watching prices for 2 years. And what was in them was not greed, and not even hope exactly. It was something more like a question. Are you going to let them tell you who you are? Ray set down his toolbox. 40 minutes earlier, none of this had been happening, and Ray Delgado had just been doing his job. The call had come in at 10:20, a valet at the Whitlock Motors Gala. A guest's Mercedes dead in the parking structure. Could someone come jump it? Routine. Ray had Mia with him. It was his weekend, and a Saturday night roadside call with a 12-year-old asleep against the window was just Tuesday for them. He'd driven over. Mia had woken up and come along because she liked watching her dad work, liked the little theater of it, the diagnosis, the fix, the customer's relief. The Mercedes had been easy, a weak battery, and a parasitic draw. Ray had it running in 4 minutes and told the embarrassed owner, gently, to get the battery tested before it stranded him somewhere worse. The man had tipped him $40 and gone back into the gala, and Ray had been packing up his jump pack when Mia, peering through the glass doors into the showroom, had said, "Dad, something's going on in there." They drifted to the doors to look, and that was how Ray Delgado came to be standing at the back of a black tie gala in a gray work shirt, watching a woman in a silver gown bet $2 million that nobody could start a car. Now he was walking toward the platform, and the room was watching him, and Sloane Whitlock was smiling her unkind smile. "This should be entertaining," she said into the microphone, playing to the crowd. "Folks, we have a contestant." The gentleman from She squinted at his shirt, Delgado roadside. "Tell us, Mr. Delgado, what makes you think you can do what the best technicians in the state could not?" Ray stopped at the edge of the platform. "Because I've been doing this 22 years, he said. "And in 22 years I've learned that a car that won't start almost never has a complicated problem. It has a simple problem and a complicated audience." He glanced at the technicians, who bristled. "No offense to your people. They went to school for the deep stuff. I went to the side of the highway for the dumb stuff. Tonight you've got a dumb stuff problem. You haven't even looked at it." "I've been looking at it for 5 minutes from across the room," Ray said. "And I've been looking at your technicians. They've got it surrounded with laptops. Nobody's got the trunk open." A flicker crossed Sloane Whitlock's face, the first crack in the show, because she didn't know if that meant anything, and not knowing was a feeling she despised. "The terms," Ray said, before she could recover. "I want them clear, in front of everybody, on camera. I start that car before midnight, with my own 2 hands, and you pay me $2 million. Cash, or a check that clears. That's the bet you made. That's the bet I'm taking." The room had gone quiet now. The cameras had turned, and Sloane Whitlock, who had made the bet as theater and never expected anyone to call it, found herself in the one position she had spent her whole life avoiding, cornered, in public, by someone she couldn't read. She could have backed out. She thought about it, he saw her think about it. But there were 300 people watching, and cameras, and a lifetime of being the woman who never flinched. "Fine," Sloane Whitlock said, and her voice was steel now, the smile gone. $2 million. You start it before midnight. It's yours. You don't." She leaned into the microphone. "You walk out of here in front of everyone having failed. Deal?" And Ray Delgado, who had a daughter watching from the back of the room, and a notebook of grocery prices burning a hole in his chest, said, "Oh? But I can start it before midnight." He rolled up his sleeves. Somebody opened the frunk. The clock said 11:16. Ray did not rush. This was the first thing the room noticed, and it unsettled them, because they had been primed to watch a man flail, and instead they were watching a man work unhurried, methodical, the way you can only be when you have done a thing 10,000 times, and the panic has long since drained out of it. He didn't touch the laptops. He waved off the scanner a technician tried to hand him. "That's your problem right there," he said, not unkindly. "You've been talking to the car's computer for 9 hours. The computer's been lying to you. When a car loses power the wrong way, the computer wakes up scared and throws every code it's got. You've been reading a panic attack and calling it a diagnosis." He went to the front of the Chiron, where the storage compartment, the frunk, sat under the sculpted nose. A technician popped it. Ray leaned in with a flashlight, and the crowd watched him look at things they couldn't see, and Mia at the back watched her father's shoulders, which she knew better than anyone, and saw them settle, the way they did when he found the thing. "Here we go," Ray said quietly. It was a switch. A battery master cut off a heavy red disconnect switch, the kind that high-value cars get fitted with for storage and transport, that physically severs the battery from the car so nothing drains it, and nothing can go wrong while it sits on a truck for a week. It was a safety feature, a good one. It was switched to off. "Your car came in on a transporter 2 days ago," Ray said, loud enough for the room, turning the flashlight so the nearest people could see. "Whoever shipped it did the right thing. They cut the master switch so the battery wouldn't die in transit. Standard, smart." He looked up at Sloan Whitlock, and then it got unloaded and detailed and pushed onto that pretty mirror, and in all the excitement nobody flipped it back on. "So your car has been sitting here for 2 days with its battery disconnected. It's not broken. It's asleep. You bet $2 million on a car that's been unplugged the whole time." A sound went through the crowd. That's not one of the technicians started, his face red. "We checked you checked the codes," Ray said. "You didn't check the switch, because you couldn't believe it'd be the switch. I can always believe it's the switch. That's the whole job." He reached in and turned the master cutoff to on. The Chiron took a breath. It was the only way to describe it. The dash lit. The systems woke. A soft cascade of chimes and glows ran through the cabin as $2 million of machine came back from the dead. But Ray didn't reach for the start button yet. This was the second thing. The thing the technicians wouldn't have known even if they'd found the switch. "Hold on," he said, half to himself, half teaching. "When a car's been cut off cold like this, you don't just crank it. The systems need a second to wake up and talk to each other. The battery's weak from sitting. The modules have to resync. You rush it, you can confuse it all over again, and then you really do have a problem. You let it boot. Like a computer." He waited, watching the dash, counting in his head the way he'd counted on 100 cold mornings, in 100 breakdown lanes. Let it find itself. He waited. The room held its breath. The clock said 11:18. Then Ray Delgado put his thumb on the start button of the most expensive car in the building and pressed it. The Bugatti Chiron 16-cylinder engine caught and roared into the showroom like a thunderclap in a cathedral. That impossible, total, building-shaking sound the car had been built to make. The sound 300 people had come to hear 9 hours ago and had given up on. Filling the room all at once and rattling the 300 crystal lights overhead. The clock said 11:18 p.m. He had done it in 3 minutes, with 42 minutes to spare, with a flashlight and a switch, and 22 years of believing it would be something simple. The room erupted, not the polite applause of before, but real noise, shock and delight. People on their feet, because there is nothing a crowd loves more than watching the impossible turn out to be easy, in the hands of the one person who knew where to look. And at the back of the room, a 12-year-old girl named Mia Delgado stood very still with both hands pressed over her mouth, watching her tired father, the man who jumped dead batteries on the side of the highway 40 times a week, stand up straight beside a roaring Bugatti in a room full of millionaires, and look. For the first time, she could remember, like exactly as much as he had always been. Ray let the engine run for a moment. Then he reached in and shut it off, into a silence that rang. He looked at Sloan Whitlock. "That'll be $2 million, he said. The room was watching her now. This was the moment, and Sloan Whitlock knew it. And so did everyone there, the moment where the queen of supercars either paid a roadside mechanic $2 million in front of 300 people and a wall of cameras, or revealed herself to be someone who made bets she didn't honor. She had built a quarter-century brand on the flourish of the loss. Pay with a smile. Make the loss the ad. She knew how to do this. The muscle memory was there. But something was different, and she felt it, standing there looking at the man in the work shirt who had just defeated her in 3 minutes with a flashlight. The losses she usually paid were theater calculated, controlled, losses she'd half-engineered. This one was real. This one she hadn't seen coming, hadn't controlled, couldn't spin. A man she'd dismissed on sight had looked at the thing her best people couldn't solve and seen it instantly, because he didn't share her certainty, because he wasn't impressed by what impressed her, because he lived in a world she'd left behind so long ago she'd forgotten it could see things hers couldn't. "You'll have it," Sloane said. Her voice was quiet now. The microphone was still in her hand, but she'd stopped performing for it. "I keep my bets. You'll have the check tonight." The room applauded. She barely heard it. She came down off the platform. The cameras tracked her, and she did something she never did, which was wave them off enough. "This is over. Give us a minute," and they backed away. And for a moment it was just Sloane Whitlock and Ray Delgado standing beside a Bugatti, two people from the same world, one of whom had escaped it, and one of whom hadn't, and neither of whom was quite who the other had assumed. "How did you really know?" she asked. Not for the crowd, for herself. Honestly, the truth. "I told you the truth," Ray said. "I checked the dumb thing, because I always check the dumb thing. Your people didn't because they're too good. That's not an insult. It's just when you respect a machine that much, you can't believe it'd be beaten by something stupid, so you never look there." He shrugged. "I don't respect machines. I've seen too many of them die of nothing. A $2 million car and a $1,000 car break for the exact same dumb reasons. The car doesn't know what it cost." Sloane was quiet for a moment. "You could have told me privately," she said. "Pulled me aside, quietly flipped the switch and let me save face and asked for a finder's fee. I'd have paid it. That's how everyone else in my life would have played this." "I know," Ray said, "but you did it in front of everyone." "You made the bet in front of everyone," Ray said. "And I've got a kid in the back of this room who watches me let people walk on me because I'm tired and money's tight. I wasn't going to teach her tonight that the move is to take the quiet payoff and let the rich lady keep her dignity." He said it without cruelty, just plain. "No offense, but my daughter was watching. Some lessons you only get to teach once." And Sloane Whitlock, who had not been spoken to without an angle in longer than she could remember, who had turned every human exchange of her adult life into a transaction or a contest, stood in her own showroom and felt something crack open that she'd had sealed for 25 years. Because the man wasn't flattering her. He wasn't afraid of her. He wasn't angling for more. He'd beaten her fair, told her the truth, and now he was just talking to her. Straight, like a person. Like she was a person and not a brand or a mark or a queen. It was the loneliest she had ever felt, and the least lonely, both at once. "Your daughter," she said. "She's the one in the back, with her hands over her mouth? That's Mia." Sloane looked across the room at the 12-year-old, and then back at Ray, and for the first time all night her face had nothing on it at all. No smile, no steel, no show. Just a tired woman of 50-some years, looking at a tired man of 47, and understanding that he had something. Standing there in his work shirt with $2 million coming to him, that all 11 of her dealerships had never once bought her. "She watches prices," Sloane said. It wasn't a question. She'd been a girl who watched prices once, 100 years ago, before the show ate the person. She recognized it. "She does," Ray said quietly. "Not anymore," said Sloane Whitlock. He took the money. This is the part of the story where, in the version people expect, the humble hero refuses the check, says the look on the rich woman's face was payment enough, drives off into the night having taught everyone a lesson, nobly broke. Ray Delgado was not that kind of fool. He had a daughter who kept a notebook of grocery prices. He had a van with 200,000 miles on it, and a house with 18 years left on the mortgage, and a college fund with $900 in it. He had won the money fair, in a bet a billionaire made of her own free will, with his own 2 hands and 22 years of hard-earned knowledge. There's a kind of pride that refuses help it needs, and Ray had met plenty of men ruined by it, and he had decided long ago that he wasn't going to be one of them. Taking what you've honestly earned is not greed. It's just sense. The false nobility of refusing it would have served no one but his ego, and Ray Delgado's ego was the cheapest thing he owned. He took the check. He folded it once and put it in the chest pocket of his work shirt, behind the embroidered Delgado roadside, and he buttoned the flap over it, and then he picked up his toolbox and went to find his daughter. Mia met him halfway across the showroom floor. She didn't say anything. She just walked into him and put her arms around his middle the way she had when she was small, before she'd gotten old enough to start carrying things a kid shouldn't carry. And Ray put his hand on the back of her head and held on. "Is it real?" she said into his shirt. "The 2 million. Is it actually real?" "It's actually real." She pulled back and looked up at him, and the thing in her face wasn't about the money, or it was. But underneath it was something Ray had been afraid he'd never see there again, which was a kid who was allowed to just be a kid. The weight she'd been carrying suddenly, impossibly, lifting. "You can stop the notebook now," Ray said. "Okay? That was never your job. It was always mine. You can put the notebook away." Mia's eyes did something, and so did Ray's, and neither of them said anything about it, the way they didn't. They drove home in the work van. The check rode in Ray's chest pocket the whole way, and Mia kept reaching over to pat the pocket like she was checking it was still there, and they laughed about it. And somewhere on the dark highway home, Mia said, "What are we going to do with it?" And Ray said, "Boring stuff. Mostly, pay off the house. Fix the van. Put almost all of it away where it can't get spent on something dumb." And Mia said, "That is boring." And Ray said, "Boring is what enough feels like. Kid, you're gonna love it." And they drove on. He did not become a different man. That was the thing the $2 million didn't buy, and Ray didn't want it to. The phone still rang at all hours, and Ray still answered it, because somewhere out there it was always somebody's worst night, stranded in the dark, and Ray Delgado was still the guy who came. He took fewer jobs now. He slept a little more. He coached Mia's robotics team on Thursdays, which he'd never had the hours for before. He bought a better jump pack. The work shirt stayed. And on the far side of the city, in a glass office above a showroom that had gone quiet, Sloan Whitlock made a phone call she'd been not making for 25 years to a person she'd turned into a transaction long ago, just to say, with no angle, no contest, no show, that she'd been thinking about them. It was a small thing. It was the largest thing she'd done in years. The bet stopped after that. People noticed. The queen of supercars, famous for her wagers, simply stopped making them. When a reporter asked her why, she said something that didn't make it into the article, because the reporter couldn't tell if she was joking. She said, "I made a bet once that the answer couldn't be simple. It cost me $2 million, and it was the best money I ever spent." There is a kind of knowledge that gets less respect the more reliable it becomes. The world prizes complexity. We trust the expensive answer over the cheap one, the complicated explanation over the simple one, the person with the diploma over the person with the calluses. We assume that a hard problem must have a hard solution, and that a $2 million machine must fail in a $2 million way. And so we surround our problems with laptops and experts and certainty, and we chase the deep thing. And all the while the answer sits right there in front of us, a switch in the off position, invisible. Because we've decided in advance that it couldn't possibly be something that simple. Sloan Whitlock built an empire on being the most certain person in every room. And her certainty that the best had failed, so no one could succeed, is exactly what cost her $2 million. Certainty is a wall. It keeps out the wrong answers, and it keeps out the right ones too. When the right one is humbler than you expected, Ray Delgado had no certainty to defend, and that was his whole gift. He'd knelt in too many breakdown lanes to believe that machines were mysterious, or that expensive meant complicated. He could always believe it was the switch, and because he could believe it, he could see it. The very thing that made him low status in that room. The roadside work, the absence of a diploma, the gray shirt, was the thing that let him solve in 3 minutes what the best in the state couldn't solve in 9 hours. He took the money, and he was right to. He didn't perform humility. He didn't feel or refuse a reward he'd honestly earned. He just stayed exactly who he was, a tired man who comes when you're stranded, who checks the dumb thing first, who wasn't going to teach his daughter that the move is to let powerful people walk on you to spare their pride. The richest person in the room had everything, and was the loneliest one there. The man in the work shirt had a daughter who'd stopped watching prices. By midnight, only one of them had won.